Not too shabby this time. Does he? It's vice versa. When I do that girl. How are y'all? How are you?
Well, a little bit.
Happy birthday to you. I met her right off the bat, and first of all, I thought that's the smartest lady I've ever met, don't you agree? And she single-handedly has changed the whole complex of this city. And when the people come into the UCDA office, they'll say, what should we see? And I'll say, let me tell you the first thing, and don't leave town until you see our museum. And I've lived in the Jackson area for the last 40 years, but this is second to none as far as, this is something we're all proud of. Don't all of you nodding your head, but really don't.
Well, I was walking the neighborhood one day, and this pretty little house on the corner was there, and it had this huge bush of rosemary. And I know what rosemary does when you touch it. It gets on your hands, and about the time I got my hand to my nose, she steps out her front door, and it was Jill's house, and I go, oh, hey. So that was our first meeting, and we spoke for a minute, and then a few weeks later I was walking in the neighborhood on the other side of her house, and she was coming out of her garden with a big can of tomatoes, and she said, well, it's you again. I think by this time she thought I was stalking her. But she and I were talking there for a bit, and I was about to go, and she said, hey, come by the museum and I'll give you a tour. And so I'm like many people, I had never been in the doors of this museum as many years as it's been here, and I have several somebodies tell me that all the time. So I came and we visited, I toured the museum and just thought, what have I been missing? And so before I left, she stepped back out the door and she said, hey, there's this position that we have, always finding a volunteer, right? And she said, it's through AmeriCorps Vista, would you apply for it? And I said, I'll think about it. So I did, and I've been here with this sweet and wonderful lady for 4 years with AmeriCorps Vista, and then now a year with the city. And so I was thinking about what Jan said a minute ago about the smartest lady. You know, people will bring a rock in here and they'll say, can you tell me what this is? And I'll go, it's a rock. It's a rock. And Jill will pick it up and she'll go, well, it's 3,623 years old. And it's from the whatever period, and then she just goes with it because she's done this for so many wonderful years. It would take me all day to tell you what she's taught me. I was a musician, I was a church worker, I was not in this business, and she's taught me so much through the years, and it's been a great experience. It's been one of the joys of my life. I think that's how she touches lives too, right? It's just on the street corner, at Walmart, in the building, out in the yard, pulling up grass, pulling up weeds, planting flowers, sitting at her desk for 8 billion hours writing grants. And if you come and visit her, she will stop and always take time with you. And people from all over the world, literally from all over the world, think we have a better museum than most metropolitan large cities. And that's to so many that she's directed, but to you, Jill, that is quite the feat.
We all know that it takes a village.
It does.
Takes all of us.
As you imagine, most of the time,
when me and Miss Jill interact, it'd be something about somebody's, not where they're supposed to be around the property, there's property here. But one day I had to call Miss Jill, I had an FBI agent, a retired FBI agent called me, and says, I need to come down and meet you at the police department. And I said, okay. I kind of knew who the gentleman was, he was retired. And he came down and he says, we've got a problem. I said, well, okay, what exactly is the problem? He said, unbeknownst to you and probably most everybody else in New Albany, the first FBI agent ever killed in the line of duty is from New Albany, Mississippi. Well, I was kind of shocked. I said, I did not know that. He said, well, me and several other agents, he said, I've already been out trying to figure some things out. And we know that he's supposed to be in the city cemetery somewhere, but we don't know where. He says, is there any way you can call and talk to anyone that may have some sort of a listing or plot map or something? I scratched my head and I said, oh, Lord. So I called the mayor's office, called the mayor, I called the former chief, David Grisham. I called some of the older people in the community that held these positions to see if they could help. Now, finally, Tim says, you know what? He said, probably the only person you're going to be able to talk to in New Albany that's still alive is Jill. I said, well, I'll call Jill. I said, you sure? I said, I don't really understand how the museum and the cemetery and all this kind of goes together. He said, call her, she'll know. So I called Miss Jill and I was kind of nervous. I thought, man, this is going to sound strange. So I called Miss Jill, got her on the phone. And I start telling a story, and then she starts filling in the gaps that I didn't know. She said, oh, yeah. So, about this time, I'd already had 2 shifts out. We were combing the cemetery and 2 retired FBI agents. And I had her on the phone. I was walking around the cemetery like this. And she said, yeah, let me work on this a minute. And she calls me back and she says, I think they're over here in the section closest to behind the gas station, that part right there. So I moved everybody from that section. In just a few minutes, we were able to find the grave, and they were able to GPS it in the FBI's database system for here on out. He will ever be able to be located on a nationwide map. So, Ms. Jill, thank you. We appreciate you.
Well, I just learned something about Jill. You can't hide from her. Even if you're dead. Even if you're dead. That's great.
Chief, on a side note, I want to let you know, we're in the process right now of planning out that cemetery. We've been working up there for several weeks now, and Eric's got it sectioned off, and we're going section by section and putting it, identifying it in a notebook with who it is, what section it's in, and to find the grave at, if you're familiar with that. So there's going to be 2 ways to find that. And the museum will have a listing of that, and City Hall will have a listing, and we give you one too if you want it.
Okay. Also, we have our chief, fire chief, Mark Whiteside, and let's see, anybody else with us? All right. All right. Then after that, we're going to recognize now Drew, Mr. Drew Horn, our alderman. Our mayor was to be here, but he's under the weather, and so he said the best alderman to fill in for him.
I don't know about that, but I know she said it takes a village, City of New Albany proclamation presented to Jill Smith. Whereas Jill Smith, native of Pontotoc County with family roots to Rocky Ford and Beulah communities in Union County, has resided in New Albany for the past 24 years. And whereas Jill Smith graduated from the University of Mississippi with a degree in journalism and a minor in interdisciplinary science and postgraduate work in museum studies, and has served in the Union County Heritage Museum Director position for 24 years. And whereas Jill has served on boards of the Mississippi Hills National Heritage Area, Mississippi Historical Society, Tallahatchie Arts Council, American Association of State and Local History, and the Archaeological Conservancy. And whereas Jill guided the museum through several major expansions, the preservation of the Ingomar Indian Mounds, the development of the Faulkner Literary Garden, the pioneer village of the Frenchman's Bend, the development of the crossing at the Green Railroad Park, the renovation of the Art House and the Faulkner Inn, and restored Tackett's Barbecue Hut, and is presently working to open the Union County's Creative Spirits exhibit. And whereas Jill developed a creative aging program and works with the Heritage Craft Preservation, the Arts, and Humanities. And whereas Jill has co-authored the history of the 41st Mississippi Infantry and art book Vanished Presence. And whereas Jill is the mother of 3 children and 8 grandchildren, still enjoys gardening, reading, fishing, growing native plants, and creating through textile art and other media. And whereas in recognition of her insurmountable experience and dedication to the Union County Heritage Museum and to the betterment of New Albany and the entire Union County and beyond, now therefore, I, Tim Kent, Mayor of New Albany, do hereby declare today, September 18th, 2024, as Jill Smith Day, and proclaim our profound and sincere appreciation to Jill Smith and for her many important contributions in community service to the city of New Albany and Union County. Signed, Tim Kent, Mayor of New Albany. Also present you with the key to the city. Kind of in the spirit like with Mr. Stewart's bridge, there's no reason that you have to be gone before you're honored. So we're very proud to call you a friend and a coworker, and thank you for all that you've done for the city of New Albany.
Well, this is overwhelming. I think there's more to come.
But it is, I'm so glad to be celebrating Jill Smith Day, aren't y'all?
Yes.
Can y'all think of a more hospitable and gracious lady than this lady right here? She represents New Albany and Union County better than anyone that I know. And on her 40th birthday, as president of the Union County Historical Society and Heritage Museum and the board and advisory council, I'd like just to take a moment also to recognize these board members. If y'all stand up, or volunteers with the museum, I'd appreciate y'all standing up. But on behalf of the board and staff, I just want to say thank you, and thank you, Ms. Jill. Thank you so much for all you do for our museum and our community, and just thank you so much. And to show our appreciation, we've got a little gift that we heard you may like. Little birdie told me you may like this, but it's a creation from Jody Ho and Chad Fletcher of Superior Artisan Wood bow ties.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Y'all don't know how many times I've lusted after it. Oh, that's one of the most beautiful things that y'all have ever made. I love it. Thank you so
This
much.
is Jody Ho, and they're with Superior, he said that, and that's Superior Artisan Wood. You see the craft work throughout the building, and yes, Jill has lusted after it.
If you've ever seen it, you see it has a light behind it, and it's just a piece of magic.
Do you want to tell them a little bit about it, Jody?
It was a labor of love. I'd gotten into doing inlays, and so I thought, oh, I need an interesting piece to do some more inlays into. So I took this nice piece of hackberry, spalted hackberry, and inlaid these pieces of, I'm not sure if this is walnut, I can't remember now. It's been a couple of years since I've done this piece. And then we decided to backlight it, and it just turned out to be a special piece, and I'm glad you appreciate it so much.
Truly love it.
For a special lady.
Now, last but not least, let's recognize the lady of the day, and I want you to say anything you'd like to this group, and then I want you to introduce your family. I think you've got your grandchildren, your daughter, and introduce them.
You know, I saw an ad in the paper, back in 2020. I was working in Huntsville, Alabama. And, I wanted to get back closer to my home base. And my mother was getting older and she needed me, and, I wanted to move my family back closer to home. So, I answered the ad for the director. And, Joe Marshall and, Hill to Hill, Betsy Hamilton, and Bette Gladney were on the committee when I interviewed. And I remember that, in Glenn Duckworth, because Glenn said, well, if you were the director, what would be the first thing you would do? I thought, well, this is a trick question. I probably don't know the answer. I said, well, I would probably try to do something down at Ingomar Mounds. And they all looked at each other, and they didn't know that story, so I got to tell them that story, so that may be why they hired me. For whatever reason, they hired me, and I prayed for, the right thing to happen in our lives, and I wanted Rose to be here, and not to have to move around anymore. We've moved a couple of times, and that's hard as children. So, as we were moving in, somebody knocks on the door, and Bethany Dalton there with this big plate of sandwiches. We had a whole lot of people helping us move, and we've become good friends over the years and worked together on so many things. And it comes down to the people that are in our lives and make a big difference. It's not just one person who does something. It's all of us together. It's our staff, it's our volunteers, and I feel so grateful and humbled to be here because it's not me, it's all of us together. And one other thing that I prayed for was my niece and I were sitting there, and she said, well, where are you gonna live? I had a house in Guntown, but I didn't want to have to make that drive, so I said, well, we're just gonna pray for a nice older home. And she said, well, what do you want it to look like? I said, I want it to have a wraparound porch. Well, God answered that prayer too, because Al Prater had one about a block from his house, and I've been living there since that time in that yellow house with a wraparound porch. So God answers prayers, and this is one of them. So I really appreciate y'all and all y'all have done today, more than I have words to say. This is my daughter Rose, she's our baby. And my son Elliot had a doctor's appointment this morning. He lives with me now. And they're my grandchildren back there. They're so happy for this because they got to Kate and Carl and Kim.
And they're FaceTiming the oldest daughter from England. She's in England.
Yeah,
So
my
she's
daughter.
staying up late to
Yeah, it's
watch.
nighttime there, but my daughter Robin and her 3 children are in Suffolk, England, and I saw where my son-in-law Josh was in Spain this
He
morning.
was in Spain.
I'm not sure why he's there, but we're spread all over the place. But I'm just so grateful that y'all would come and do this today, and it'll be somebody else's turn next.
In about 30 years.
So, Steve, or Kathy said, well, you make a banner for Jill Smith Day. And I was like, sure, and then I started thinking about it. I was like, well, I feel like Jill has made such a huge impact on the art community. People in New Albany say, oh, New Albany has a great, we always talk about the performance aspect of, the theater. If you like to sing and dance and be in plays and musicals and stuff, that's awesome. We have a huge community for that. But for the visual artists, we haven't had a whole lot here, except for Jill. And she has done more for the artistic community, for the visual artists in this community that I've been thinking for days. I'm like, no one has done for the visual artists what Jill has done. And I know there are a lot of artists out there who want to contribute to this. This is just the beginning. So we kind of made a list, like, what are things that weren't here until Jill came along? What are some things that exist today around here that did not exist without her vision? And so we just started letting artists pick. You know, which piece do you want to do? And so if you are one of those people who would like to continue this, it's definitely still an open invitation to participate, because I kind of had to do it on the download, so she would know about it. So I couldn't really like make a public post about it, so I just tried to grab some people who I know could do it quickly. This is Rebecca Browning on the top, the caboose, Benji Foley, we call it clearance, Clarence, the railroad viewing bridge, and the art house is in the background. Jeanette Stone did the Faulkner Garden. Tracy Venisi did the art house. Gail Morton and some students did all of the bugs.
Oh, I love that.
And they did that as part of a class over at the art house. I did the top of the totem pole out back that was created by one of our favorite artists, Clyde McDowell. The Faulkner Inn is Madison Rainwater. Emily Murph did the Faulkner Garden. Vivian Venisi did the dinosaur. There's so much more that has happened here and continues to happen. Jill's brain never rests, and she has brought so many fantastic artists and art experiences to the people of the creative people of this community, that you really can't even begin to list it. You really can't. Just look behind her. This gallery constantly changes with the most amazing exhibits of art, and then the artists come in and talk about it and inspire the rest of us to continue to create. And so this is just, to me, this is just a teeny little handful of the people that she has impacted and the lives that she's impacted through providing artistic experiences for those of us who we don't have anywhere else. This is it. This is it for us, for the visual artists. So that's what this is.
Jody?
I just wanted to add something to my description about the piece that we made. I didn't realize it until, a couple of minutes after I stopped talking. But if you know about bow ties, that's the name of the piece, and that's what those pieces are down the center of the piece. They're meant to tie different sides of the wood together. So there might be an opening in the wood, and the bow tie, the piece of wood, ties things together. And I was just standing here realizing, I don't know Jill that well. We got to know each other when we did our exhibit here and when we did our talk. But just hearing everybody talk about her contributions to the community, I just realized that this is a very appropriate piece to present to Jill, because of her ability to tie people in the community together.